Hey everyone, welcome back to Be Not Afraid. Today we decided that we wanted to talk about some of the toxic elements that we have found in looking at ethnic studies. We have been researching and have found that these are pretty common among every type of curriculum that you can find. And so we wanted to discuss them. Brooke has made a PowerPoint, so we're going to go over that today. So welcome. And just to make it clear, we want to always make it clear that we are not against teaching about different cultures. We are not against cultural celebrations. What we are against is the liberation, the anti-American view that is part of the very definition of ethnic studies. So go ahead, Brooke.
Thank you. So the main thing that I've been looking for is where's the evidence that backs that this type of teaching is going to unify people and it's going to help people. And the biggest thing is our history and what's behind it. So this is a picture of two walls, and obviously the first wall is the wall in between the Mexican and United States border. And then the second one is the wall that's divided East and West Berlin. Now, what's the difference between these two walls?
One wall has people who are trying to get into a country, and another one is keeping people, so they're trying to get out of their own country, and another one is making sure that people cannot leave their own country.
Yes, so communism, it's very obvious that if you have to keep your people in, that it's not working. And if there's a country where people flock to you from all around the world, then there's something that's right about it that's working. And that's being ignored when they're teaching ethnic studies. This very fact, the historical importance and benefit to the American system is completely being ignored. So today's ethnic studies has as the bad version of ethnic studies that most people aren't aware of have two main components, and that's for social justice and for equal outcomes.
And I'm going to clarify that.
Yeah.
When we say the bad version, what we mean are liberated ethnic studies, otherwise sometimes called action civics.
Mm-hmm. And so in order for these two things to exist, then they have to first stomp out inalienable rights and individual liberty, because those things cannot happen if you have forced equal outcomes. Somebody has to decide what those outcomes are and who merits them. And in order for that person to decide, the individual cannot. Therefore, individual liberty and inalienable rights are gone. And social justice is a factor of deciding who gets the equal outcomes and how they're going to get them. So how social justice is brought about, it begins with division. And here is the wheel of power that you can see how everyone is being divided. And it really doesn't matter how they're divided. What matters is that the perception of division. So if you can get people to believe that they're divided, even if they're not, that perception of division on multiple levels will generate in most people a sense of unfairness and a desire to right that. So this is a very, very intricately woven deception of division.
So what this would look like for an elementary school, could you go back there for a moment? Okay. Mm-hmm. Is that they might be given a picture in a book that looks like this and given a worksheet next to it that maybe is an intersectionality flower. And I'm saying maybe, but I have actually seen this activity. So you have an intersectionality flower where the child, the elementary grade child, is supposed to look at this list and decide what on this list they that they relate to, that encompasses their truth or their reality. And it generally makes kids feel pretty bad about themselves. It's some kids will leave things blank. um, if you imagine that you are that African American child in the room, um, and how far away you are from power, it's very quick and very immediate. And then if you are an African American child who is adopted, then a lot of your power, you're unpersoned, as Brooke and I were discussing earlier. This can deperson you, and just put you into boxes.
Well, and that's what happened to my son at work because he's Black with white parents. His supervisor, who was Black, said to him, you have white parents, you're not Black. And so all of a sudden you don't exist. So those labels are really only for people who fit the narrative completely. And if they don't, then you have no identity. So.
What is this? So you have power because you drive? I'm just taking a look at some of these. I'm sorry, but that works a lot for people who want those 15-minute cities. Those become more equitable. To take away your car makes a more quote unquote equitable society.
Right. Okay. I'm trying to get to my thing right here.
Sure.
Okay. So the one thing they're taking away from identity, they're taking those spokes of anyone's personhood, like the fact that you drive, and they're transforming it into your full identity, and not even mentioning the natural genesis of identity, which has been traditionally how people identify or get a sense of belonging. And that is through their character. This is who I am. I wouldn't do that. Their family and their spiritual origin. So this isn't even mentioned. Now you're just a superficial element of that's all your character is, and you find belonging amongst those people. And so even your character, your family, and your spiritual origin, because it's not mentioned, is erased. So it's very superficial type of belonging that doesn't allow you to develop as a person and those characteristics and abilities that we want. It doesn't mention a becoming sense. It's a very static view of, so here it is, very static view of who you are rather than a growth centered view. It takes you in time.
The thing that's so frustrating and disconcerting about all of this is that when you think about the beginning of, or at least the noticeable beginning of ethnic studies and this interpretation of who you are, you start to think about who it was in the beginning that started calling these definitions out and defining people and who they are, because it's someone else telling you if you're good, if you're bad. It's an interpretation of terms by people who, I don't know, some of these people that started this, I don't know what kind of a background they had, but what gives someone else the right to dictate to the masses who they are? And that's the thing about ethnic studies that is so troubling, is that people fall so readily into it without understanding its beginnings and its end result.
Yes. And there was a kid, I think it was last week, my son came home crying and he's like, Mom, this girl keeps telling me I'm trans. And I said, okay, let's practice. This is what you say. You say, who are you to tell me who I am? And so we practiced, we role played. And so he would say, or my other daughter would say, you're trans. Who are you to tell me who I am? And identity is such an intrinsic part of individuals and cultures that to wipe out the real genesis of identity, which is our character, our families, our spiritual origin, these deep things, and to say, now you are no longer that, you are yourself in the moment, whatever is reflected. And if it doesn't fit our narrative, you no longer have an identity. So, getting our kids used to saying, you can't tell me who I am. I know who I am. and I get to choose who I'm going to be as well. So anyway,
And that's the beauty of this whole thing. I don't want to interrupt what you're saying, Brooke. But when you go back to the concept of communism, Marxism, whatever you want to name it, those civilizations, those governments have failed miserably. And you know, the irony of the whole thing, that they're trying to dismantle the United States government and how it has worked in the past. But the irony is those people in those governments have fled to the United States to escape that mindset.
mhm, yes,
Well,
and
the thing, go ahead.
go ahead.
What I always come back to is that they are reducing people down to pawns. They are
Mhm.
reducing people down to something that they can use. You know, it used to be, and there's no secret that we all tend to lean politically to the right of things. But I wanted to quote a Democrat. I wanted to quote Eleanor Roosevelt, who says, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent."
Oh,
That
nice.
that used to be I mean, Eleanor Roosevelt is a very well-known Democrat, and that used to be their viewpoint.
Mhm,
But now we are training our kids to feel inferior. These kids are looking for a reason to not be in that center of power because they're the worst. The people in the center of power, the white, neurotypical, stable, able-bodied, Christian, rich, post-secondary education, homeowners. These people are in places of power. And so they want our children to be anything. Our children are being raised, being groomed to be anything but that.
Mhm.
and they're being groomed to call each other those names and to label each other, like what was
Other,
happening to my son. It's like it's not just the labeling of themselves and keeping themselves down, but keeping others down and labeling them. They believe that that's what they're supposed to be doing. But if you look at it, we've all been everything. I mean, not everything, but we've jumped around the wheel and our identity has not changed. I've been a renter, I've been a homeowner, I haven't been homeless. But we're in different phases of our lives, we're different things. And this wheel is just not about development, it's not about growth, it's not about unity, it's all about labeling and division and keeping people down.
Yes.
Okay, so then ultimately that's all you see. This is the power wheel right here, and their eyes have it in them. And so that's how they begin to view the world instead of, who their real identity is. They're just labeling.
well, there's no curiosity. I think that that's interesting about that picture is that they have these very, very blank faces and there is no curiosity because to ask questions, to have a sense of understanding. One of the most atrocious memes that I have seen is one where it shows a woman and she's got makeup on and she says, uh, we can disagree and get along does not apply to. And then it's a list of all of the things that it doesn't apply to. So it'll say does not apply to the homophobe, the cisgender, the this. And I'm like, what an ugly thing to teach people. It should be we can get along without agreeing on everything.
Mhm.
That's the ideal way to have even brilliant kids versus pawns versus brainless tools for an agenda.
When you reduce a human person, an individual, to what you just said, then there has to be a power that is overseeing the masses. And when you reduce individuals to non-thinking, non-progressing, everybody is the same, nobody questions, you have a power dynamic where those that are enforcing those principles, those designs have the control, and those who are underneath do not. And that is how you control. And it's when you look at the human mind and you see the brilliance in an individual, and at the same time, you see the ability to train an individual to stifle that brilliance. Yeah, there needs to be a measure and a goal towards getting rid of this type of dominance. And again, it's individuals who are calling out to the rest how they should be living and what life is supposed to look like. It's frustrating.
Well, it's child abuse.
It is. It
And
is.
it's stomping out diversity. Like in the name of ethnic studies, we stomp out diversity of thought, diversity of experience. You pull down the power in order for some person who has the power to decide who gets it. And so then, therefore, ethnic studies doesn't exist because diversity is outlawed. It's only these people that can have it. Pull down everybody else, because these are the ones we have designated are the ones who are worthy. And so it's a very dangerous, very homogenous end that we're going towards.
It's almost, it's crazy to me when people will just throw out the Nazi term all over the place when they don't see that they're saying that there is an ideal way to be.
Yeah.
That's historically frightening.
Mhm.
So
Just because it may have flipped from the Nazis, they put, white male, blue eyes, blonde at the center. They're putting something else in the center, but it's the other side of the coin. It's the exact same thing. You have to, individual liberty and is at the ultimate. So anyway, after they divide the people into power stratified identities, dissatisfaction is bred through propaganda that relies on withholding information, misrepresentation, and lies about our noble American heritage that has existed as a constitutional republic for 200, I think it's 37 or 57, I forget, years. Filled with dissatisfaction, students are taught to disrupt and dismantle the oppressors, aka America, and any who hold the values upon which she was founded. So this is the end goal, because America is lumped in as the oppressors, along with the white males who did it. And so this truly is an attack on America and its ideals. And America is the guarantor of diversity because it guarantees inalienable rights and individual liberty. So,
well, and it goes further than just America. It's Western civilization.
mhm.
So that's why the same thing is happening in certain places in Europe. That's why this is happening all over, because the goal is to remove any of the principles that have made us, that have anybody as a sovereign nation. Any nation that's sovereign, they want it to be gone so that it can be under a global control, which is why we hear
Right.
a lot of types of words like global citizen.
Right.
Yeah.
Against the opposition, those people that are trying to hold the cards.
Mhm. And so in order to truly have ethnic studies, ethnic diversity, you have to first have the foundation of America, American liberty, inalienable rights. Otherwise, it's a communistic thing. So I think that's the core of what we're trying to do. So now we're trying to identify which elements make ethnic studies toxic. And so if you see any of these elements in an ethnic studies program, then you're going towards toxicity instead of unity, which is what most people want in ethnic studies, is unification and celebration of different cultures and love of that. But by introducing these things, you're making it toxic. So we're just going to look at the ideology of whiteness. And this one is that whiteness is race, privilege, and you have more power, more resources. It doesn't matter if you were born penniless or you're homeless. If you're in the Ozarks, your skin color is determining the truth of your existence and your experience. You can't stand up and say, actually, I was abused and it was really hard and I was white. And so, well, you don't fit the narrative, therefore it's not valid. And this is really erasing people with this. So the only measurable sense outcome that you could have for this is equal material outcomes for every single individual. What's to resolve the ideology of whiteness? Communism. So if you can't make that leap,
But only for some, right? Because we're watching our Congress, we're watching all sorts of people get raises while the rest of us are supposed to become a place of equal outcomes.
mhm.
Yeah.
Gender ideology is also in there. It's divisive. It's divisive between traditionally held beliefs, most of America, and the new generation that believes this propaganda. It's also divisive from biology and from what actually exists. It's an unrealistic science. It's a pseudoscience. So introducing these topics that people believe wholeheartedly that have no basis in truth is a great way to get people to come on board and believe further lies. So this introducing this, yeah.
Also, it is it's divisive in families. There's so many parents who are really genuinely struggling because they know that if they hold on to truth, they can lose their children. And
literally in California
literally
and Canada.
Literally in California, but there's also teachers who will put signs up on their doors that say, if your parents don't accept you and affirm you, I'm your new mom, I'm your new dad. So emotionally, they will still, and dividing the family is important because people will fight for their families. So if you have a war going on in your home over something, these are the people who either gave birth to you or brought you into your home as this baby and believed all of the potential in the world for you. And they want only what's best for you. And you're being told that they're against you because you have been told a lie. So is it a lie that, are there people who are intersex? Yes, but it is such a small percent of the population. And there's also the whole part of the thing that people aren't being told, which is there's a huge amount of people that are detransitioning. And then usually they come back and they're very angry at the institute, which is oftentimes a school that has told them, I will support you, I will affirm you, I will be the new person for you. And then they have to live with shame. They have to live with regret. They have to live with the dysfunction that has been brought into their families.
And their bodies, their dysfunction. They can no longer function as a male or female if they've had surgery or hormones. And so this is all these elements in the beginning are to establish identity and wipe out these innate sense of identity and belonging that comes with families. It's to break it down and put in different classes. So that's why these are included. It's because the class dissatisfaction, the anger at this, that it won't be accepted, when really it's just dividing further. Same thing with intersectional identity. If an ethnic studies program has intersectional identity, this was theorized by Kimberly Crenshaw, who is a critical race theorist. So this is an element of critical race theory, which most people accept as divisive, oppressed and oppressor. They'll say ethnic studies isn't CRT, but if ethnic studies has intersectionality in it, that's an element of the divisive CRT theories. The wheel of power that we just looked at. So this is Sylvia Duckworth. So it reasserts white Americans are racially and ethnically privileged, unconscious bias, which you can never get around. You can never disprove it. They always can say, I know you have it. So shaming people and putting them in a non-growth mindset, this is who you are. You have unconscious bias, and assigning negative characteristics where they may not exist. It's meant to keep them down. So it's a down keeping system.
It's also meant to silence them. They feel like they don't have the power to say something. I have watched grown adults say,
Dog
I
is snoring.
understand.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
My dog is snoring. I'm
Oh.
not. Okay, go. You watched grown adults.
Yeah, I have watched grown adults sit in a room and I'm talking prestigious, I'm talking about senators, be in a room and say, I know I shouldn't speak because, and then it just immediately empowers the minority to say, that's right, you've been speaking for over 300 years. Objectively not true, because no one alive has been around for 300 years, but you are empowering hatred. And they will get so mad when you say something like you're being divisive or you're teaching hatred. But it's so obvious when you're in the room and somebody feels like they have a right to tell you to shut up because they were born a different skin tone than you.
Yeah, I like to say, I get to play too. I'm going to get on the court and I'm going to play. Maybe my uniform doesn't look right. Maybe it's whatever, but I'm going to get on the court and I get to play too. And that's what America gives us. You get to play too. As an individual, you have inalienable rights to get on that court. Doesn't matter what your skin color is. It doesn't matter what your sex is. You get to play too. And that's what we need to reinforce for kids and senators and everybody who's buying into this hogwash. So whoever you were listening to. The other toxic element of today's ethnic studies is they make communists heroic, and they celebrate and encourage people to idealize violent radicals. And so here's a list of those people. If you see any of these people in an ethnic studies program, try and find as many original source documents as you can to find out the truth of them and what they're doing, and see if any of the things that they have been preaching, how it ended up. Look at history. I think that the wall is the biggest telltale sign of American and communism, the benefits of both and lack of it. So Paulo Freire, BLM, Black Lives Matter, Black Panther Party, all of these, take a screenshot. If they're in the ethnic studies program, it's toxic.
You know, can we go back to that one for a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if they're celebrated, it's toxic. I mean,
right. Well, I think one of the things is that we're teaching our children that these people are heroes when history hasn't played out yet. So you'll take something like BLM and you'll say, oh, they did this wonderful stuff in 2016, 2020. But the verdict is out. I don't want my child being taught something as fact when the fact is that there's bankruptcies, when the fact is that there are mansions being purchased, and the money isn't going into communities and uplifting the people who are supposedly oppressed. So then why would this already be in our schools? Why would pictures of them, glossy covers of how wonderful they are, or lessons about how Black Lives Matter is like the Southern Passage? Like, how can we have lessons like that when it hasn't played out? We don't know what their history is. You take somebody like Paulo Freire, who was kicked out of Brazil because his ideas were crap, and you were praising them. Robin DiAngelo has not played out yet.
You know,
Cindy, oh, go ahead. Yes.
you know, Carrie, and whoever is listening, I'm going to step back and I'm going to be an educator right now. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm listening to this and I'm seeing all that Brooke has brought out, which is incredible. But if I step back a minute and you're asking, how are these people being qualified to be able to teach about them? We haven't seen the end result. They're not teaching American history like they should anymore. And without that background, that knowledge of who we are and why we came to be, I mean, the very reason this nation was formed, we're not teaching that. And without a clear foundation, it's like teaching children in the home. Parents, if they're going to have children, they need to take that responsibility to teach those children principles, truths, character building exercises, so that they can establish who they are. Without that, they're pliable. So that's why this is able to work like it is, because they have taken history out of the schools the way it should be taught.
Yeah, it's just another
And they're
form-
taking down, I'm sorry, they're taking down the very monuments that remind us, like the flag, that remind us who we are. And this is a deliberate effort towards this global control, which is communism or worse. So it's making mindless, I'm sorry, mindless monkeys. Can I say that? Because they're going by the rules that have been given them, and they're judging people, and people who were once friends are no longer friends in some areas.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
wondering what other groups in when we used to teach history, American history properly, what groups were celebrated? I don't remember the Republicans. So the Republicans group was really great because they wanted to free slaves, you know. That was never taught in groups to join. And all of a sudden we're teaching about groups. And I might be wrong. Maybe we were like this group and this group and this group, but when they're teaching about groups that exist now, it seems to be very leading. They're leading them. Hey, go find this group. They still exist. Go see what they do. It's not a historical analysis of what they did, but rather a, you know, this is what you need to go do. This is a good one. If you see that there's damage being done right now by all this power wheel, you go find them and make it right. And so using groups that exist now is very instructive in action civics, as we call it.
and also only using certain people within the groups. You could use John McWhorter, who is he loves Barack Obama. So wherever he's at, but he's more reasonable than Ibram X. Kendi. You can use Robert Woodson. You can use which is the 1776 Unite Project, but they don't want any voices on that don't push towards liberation. That's the problem. So you can have all of their points on that wheel of power and privilege and intersectionality and whatever else. But if you don't have the right message, you're not going to show up on this list.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reading, we actually have a lot of people watching us right now, which is awesome. So power works very complicated ways. It's not only a matter of identity. That's true, but our kids are being taught that there's only one way to have power. And that is to be, honestly, can we go back to the list for a second, the wheel? Because to me, that wheel, what it's saying, sorry, is that the way to have power is to be as broken as possible. Vulnerable, visibly disabled, poor, senior, only got your GED, which I don't think says much today, by the way. That's an aside. Sheltered, homeless. This is how you become the most powerful. Talk about having no goals for our kids. Sorry, go ahead.
Excellent point to bring out.
It's how you avoid being called names. People are so afraid to be called names.
Yes.
So they're afraid to be themselves because they'll be called names.
And cowards, because that's really what it comes down to. Cowards rarely make history. I was just thinking about how I went to DC with my family, and we went to multiple museums. And if these people only thought about the fact that they were marginalized in one way or another, they never would have accomplished much, because it really is about weakening people.
Okay. The other thing is vilifying subtly parent concerns, and this is to divide the generation from their belonging and their identity with their family. And so if parents protest what you're being taught because it's psychologically destructive and divisive, then they say, hey, that's what parents used to do when they were trying to desegregate in the 1960s and other elements. But this false equivalent is really getting them more to separate into classes, to divide. That's the whole goal, is to divide and to say they don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't need to be dependent on truth or facts or anything, just that the saying these two are the similar, and it's not even outright. It's very subtle in a lot of these ethnic studies books that we've been going over. So just being aware of those things that are drawn, those equations, those lines, this leads to this. Colonialism, talking about that and trying to stop colonialism. And so I don't understand how, in Israel, anti-colonialism is leading to violence and innocent people being killed based upon their identity markers. Now Israel's being called a colonist, and it doesn't make sense to me, because if you look at the history of Israel, but I don't think it has to make sense. You just have to know that being called a colonialist is a bad thing. And if you're a colonialist, despite the evidence, you're bad. And, Columbus, he wanted to convert the world and help them by converting them to Christianity. He wasn't looking for power, but because of the people who followed and did bad things, he became a colonist. So, it's just another name to call.
Really what it is anti-globalism. That's all. Like anti-colonialism is, or why they're Zionists is because, like I said before, they're sovereign. They believe in something sovereign. I think the whole thing with Israel has also to do with religion. They need to erase religion. If you go back to the one before this, the one about subtly vilifying parents, it's not only vilifying parents, but there's also a real push to lovingly bring your parents along. And it comes right back down to Mao's Four Olds, yes, and the one about removing, I wish I had it in front of me, but the family, reducing the role of the family, or changing the role of the family, getting rid of old traditions. So you subtly bring your family along by a child coming into the house and you saying, give me a hug, good night. And they say, you need to ask my consent. Or another one that I know how people will feel about this. I used to love the song Imagine. And then in today's context, I looked at the song Imagine and I realized that all of these choirs around, all of them are singing the song Imagine as a focal point in their concerts. And it's imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if they tried, constant speaking of how we can create a beautiful utopia and bring our family along. But the flip side of that is that if we don't bring our family along, you are supposed to find a new family.
Yeah, but I have two of my closest friends have been brought along. They said, oh, after my kid talked to me, I've been convinced. So yeah, they're doing a good job of re-educating their parents to see things and a different sense of identity and belonging. Okay, so, this is just climate change, free markets, bad news. They're equated with racism. They say that, free markets developed slavery and all sorts of things that aren't true. Slavery has been around since the history of the world. And but they're saying these go together. So therefore, if you believe in capitalism, you believe in slavery, because slavery made capitalism, and they're not taught the true history of what happened, so they can teach whatever they want. And nobody wants to be called the name, especially the name racist. And so they say, if you don't believe in climate change, you're racist. If you believe in free market, you're racist, because this is the origin of what it is. And so bringing that into ethnic studies is bringing in the seeds of communism by sowing division.
And it's such a tricky thing because BlackRock, Facebook, Microsoft, there's a huge list of all of these companies that that sponsor our education system, that have pushed in the CRT, the SEL, the all of these things, and they are capitalists. They own so much. They have a monopoly over so much of what's going into our world, not just our country. But yet they're the people who are sponsoring the programs, telling our kids capitalism is evil.
Which made them rich. And the only way for them to get richer is if nobody else has capitalism and more power.
That's right. That's right. I'm really convinced, and we all know this, parents have an obligation to understand and learn about what's going on with their children, and reminisce of some of the things that they were taught and that they enjoyed when they were younger, and to be able to see the dissolving of some of these principles. And yet I think too many people are complacent with what's being taught and said, because we've had so many good things that we cannot imagine life without them. But if this keeps going like this, the powers that be, as you just named, will be the ones that benefit and everyone else will suffer. So parents need to take a hard line on this knowledge and understanding of what's going on in their child's classroom and these new programs that are being set up and distributed in the schools.
And that's another thing, is that it's so tricky because it's presented so beautifully. So the next time that we come on, we are going to talk about Castles, the bait and switch, the way that they present things to teachers versus the way they present things to parents. Because they present it so beautifully that a parent who is not, in this space that we're in, will just go, well, that sounds good to me. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just going to help my child listen better. It's just going to help their behavioral problems. Oh, I would love help with their behavioral problems. Meanwhile, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Carrie. I spoke with an educator, a friend of mine, that went to the very, very beginning of the school, in the auditorium. They have all the teachers, everybody is there. They talk about what they're going to be doing for the school year. And they brought up all of these things from Castle and SEL. And I asked the individual, I said, so how did all that sound to you? This is an educator that should know better. And yet somehow it escaped so many, but he said, hey, sounded great to me. I'm going, well, you better look into it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to end, because there is a solution that I want to show, is the Civic Alliance standards for K through 12 civics teaching. And I just want to make people aware of that. It uses original sources, and each year what they should know, because the way you combat this is, the truth, and you understand the foundation of our country and why it works. So then the last thing, they dismantle systems. So if they're looking to dismantle systems, if they're looking to create kids to be activists and protest, it's to take down our country and then This is basically what we need to do to truly protect the diversity of cultures and ethnicity is we first have to protect the American identity and culture because it has the elements for freedom of expression that we need in order for all of these cultures to exist. And American culture is based on individual liberty, family, and God as the fundamental genesis of identity rather than the power wheel, which is determined and enforced by a state entity. I see no other way, or by a powerful entity. And then freedom of religion, speech, press, and arms. And this leads to true ethnic studies. So America is the genesis of that. Then I have a one pager, and I want to show you, I just have to open up my screen really fast. One of the great things that we can teach our kids, and let me just, it's called Civics Alliance, and they have free standards for K through 12. And just a second, I can't find your screen. Okay, so this is, they have K through 12, so we're going to look at 12th grade. But these are the standards that you can use, and just go to Civics Alliance, and it's a free download that anybody can use. They have a toolkit for to get it passed as state standards in any state. And these are what should be taught in the 12th grade. So the nature of citizenship, and then if you go through, you can have the examples of original sources that you can study, such as the Magna Carta, Laws of Virginia, the Mayflower Compact, which I really love because what can you use that isn't tainted? There are so many resources out there that are tainted with these 10 elements that we just reviewed, that how can you find something that truly supports American freedom? So I'm just going to show you who created Civics Alliance. It's called American Birthright. And it lists all of the people in here that are expert consultants, the steering committee, coalitions. So you have Moms for America and the Woodson Institute, Eagle Forum. So this is a really great standards, and these are what should be taught at each grade level to have that foundation to be able to reject the seeds of communism that are coming through in many of the programs that our children are receiving in schools. So
I want to answer that one because I had somebody tell me the other day, how can you say that you're against indoctrination? You just want to replace the indoctrination. And to that, I would say yes. Yes, we should be teaching our children. It's our responsibility to teach our children what they need to learn and to be productive, contributing members of society, and to live healthy lives. And what I mean by healthy is not fragile, not learning how to keen, like the religious kind of crying type of things, not becoming drains on society. That is our responsibility to teach our kids. And so teaching them to love a country that will give them so much if they protect it. It'll give them so many opportunities if they protect it, is something we should absolutely double down and say, yep, we are trying to teach our kids these things because these things are good. These things are true.
mm-hmm.
And these things are proven.
Exactly. Those are my exact words. I'm like, the difference between indoctrination, different flavors of indoctrination, what differentiates them is proven truths. There's a wall. If the wall is to keep the people in, it's a system that's broken. If the wall is to keep people from running into it, you have a system that works. And that is, are you going to teach true principles or not? Proven principles or not? And where's the basis? Where is the proof that your system is going to generate utopia? There is none. You just have the failure of communism in the history books.
Lynn, do you have some thoughts?
No, you guys have summed it up beautifully. Proven truth.
I am so grateful that you guys have come on, and I'm so grateful for the people who have watched. Yay, we have people watching us. I just want to see if there's anything that I should read. I've been trying to follow. I cannot pronounce that. Trebizond music. There are some interesting ways to understand power, like Robert Greene's book about the 48 laws, but that wheel is the most vulgar kind of Dilbert Boss dogmaticism. True. It's true. Like they're teaching these very, very vulgar things to our kids. And I can't help but believe that the people in power, probably in another country, are sitting back and laughing at how we are destroying an entire generation.
I'm certain.
And then Camp Army Brat said, don't forget SEL. Trust me, we will not forget SEL. That is that is something that we talk about all the time. And like I said, probably tomorrow, if not Friday, we will jump on and really go through CASTLE. I recommend that anybody does that, and don't go to the parent site, because there's literally a page that says how to sell SEL to parents. You want to go and watch what the teachers are being trained to do in that program.
Mhm.
Can I say one thing before you
Yes.
jump off?
Mhm.
Vladimir Putin, I heard him speak the very same words, and he's not the only one that has spoken out what a laughing stock this country is under what's taking place with the citizens and the youth here. They're not doing it there, but we are a laughing stock at this point for we're allowing to happen.
Yeah, I just interviewed somebody who came from China, and what they're talking about as far as what their TikTok looks like versus what our TikTok looks like, what their standards are there. The standards are perfectionism, and he really goes down. I highly recommend anybody, side note, go and watch that interview that I just did with Alvin. Because what he says is that communism, when you're younger, it teaches you be kind to everyone, be tolerant, be this. But if somebody's beneath you, shame them. That's exactly what we're being taught.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does that sound familiar?
Yeah. All right, my friends, thank you so much, and I will see you next time.